Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and this is going to be something of a peculiar week. Obviously, with Canada Day starting this week, and of course, July 4th for the Americans coming in, I think probably about a day after I release this, or possibly two, depending. It's going to be a bit of an interesting week to kind of get everything done. So, what I've kind of decided to do with this episode is kind of make it a bit of a doubleheader. So we're going to start off with the hacking chip. We're going to be talking about that a whole lot. And then I'm going to kind of come back to the whole idea of travel time, travel distance, and limited range on fighters, things like that. And I realize that CIG is going a certain direction with that. And if they indeed intend to stay the course, I would like to submit a suggestion that I think would make it, from my point of view, something that would make it much more acceptable, and hopefully other people agree with me. But with that stuff out of the way, let's get started. Now, those of you who know me and know this channel know that hacking has been something that I've been very excited about. The E-War, the hacking, the Herald, everything that goes along with it, and even the other ships that might take up that function. The Vanguard Sentinel, of course, the Star Runner are two very well-known examples that are ships that are also going to be involved in the E-Warfare and possibly hacking in the future. And that's something that I often joked about even in the battle days of the 2.0 series of patches, which is, depending on when the Sentinel gets implemented in the game, that could change my mind about the Vanguard, and I could see myself getting back into a Sentinel, because it represents, I think, at least back at that point, it represented a much more sensible Vanguard. Even though the current version obviously is an upgrade, I kind of like the Sentinel a little bit more. Now, with the hacking chips being announced and just kind of being dropped on us the way they were, I had a lot of time to think about it. And I think that a lot of people would probably think that my first reaction to it is like, oh man, why didn't you just implement that on the Herald? You should have just put it on the Herald right away. It would have been such a perfect opportunity. It's a dead ship. I've said it so many times. It would be so great if you brought that functionality into the game. With the Herald, it would be great. Since data running keeps slipping off the timetable, it would be amazing. But honestly, I'm kind of okay with it. I mean, there is a certain amount of disappointment, but at the same time, I'm kind of okay with it, because with a lot of features that get announced with the next big patch, with the next big quarterly release in Star Citizen, it all sounds really great, provided it works. Now, it's kind of easy to kind of look at this content and say, oh, well, hacking chip, it's not that big a deal. But then when you listen to Todd Pappy talk about it and the knock-on effects that this would have in the universe, missions to go and hack things, missions to stop the hack, bringing players into collision, which is, some people haven't really gotten the memo on that, one of the points of Star Citizen, And even though I would love to see the Herald brought to life and this be its moment, as a tier 0 implementation of a hacking chip, I'm okay with that. I am perfectly fine with that. I mean, that is something that, truth be told, CIG had said a long time ago when they first talked about hacking, is that the best hacks that you could do, or the most damaging hacks that you could pull off in the universe, you would have to be there on site to do it. You would have to physically be able to access the system in order to do that. And the things that you could do at range would be far more limited. Now, to a certain degree, it's true that hacking the satellites technically already exists in the game. You get a mission that says, go shut down this satellite. If you're a criminal, you get these missions all the time. It gets you 5-star crime stat rating and, an instant death sentence in the system, but you get 6,500 UEC at the same time. So it's kind of, it kind of evens out a little bit. And, you go into the satellite, you open up the screen, and it just says, instead of, whatever options are there, it'll just say hack right in the middle of it. And then you can go and you do the hack. It shuts down the satellite. And there you go, job done. But it's not really hacking. I mean, you're basically just pushing a button that says hack. And I think a lot of us would probably look to, like, even the mini games from GTA 5 or GTA Online. Certainly they have certain hacking components to some of their missions. And Deus Ex, I think, is an excellent example of a hacking system in a video game that allows you to kind of, explore, upgrade, and try different paths to achieving what you're trying to achieve. Those are certainly certain examples that I would kind of bring to the fore and say, here's good examples of that gameplay, but we really haven't got any kind of real hacking. It's not really a challenge. You just go and you flip the light switch off, more or less. So as the beginning to that, even if you need to go get this chip to facilitate this type of activity, I like the fact that they're going in this direction. How much is the chip going to cost? Where do you buy it? What do you have to do? Do you have to earn a certain type of rep? And then possibly in the future, maybe you become known as a hacker and you can go out and sell these services to other players. Like, oh man, I can't land anywhere. I've got crime stat. Well, you know what? If you got 10,000 UEC, maybe I can get rid of that crime stat for you. That kind of specialized knowledge and that kind of specialized access is something that I think a lot of us would be really excited to see. I would like to see it as part of the Herald, but you know what? If this is the basic implementation, this is the very first kind of kick at the can, and they want to kind of flesh it out a little bit and then see what works best and then implement what works best into the Herald, then I'm totally okay with that. I am absolutely okay with that because, to be perfectly honest, I thought that we were probably going to get some kind of tier 0 implementation of data running before we were ever going to get hacking. I thought hacking was going to be like real, actual hacking was going to be somewhere further down the line before we actually saw this. So the fact that it's not included in the Herald doesn't really bother me all that much. I'd like to see it, but obviously it just isn't, it's just not going to happen this time around. Throughout the game, we're confronted with all these little computer rooms. This is actually a freeze frame of the one from within the Caterpillar. But many ships have a variation on these types of systems. Many space stations, the Kovalex station famously has a very large computer room. And we've always kind of wondered and speculated about what can we do? I mean, can we download somebody's navigational data and find out where their base is? Or can we, steal secret plans or information or anything like that out of these systems? What's the interaction going to be? And to begin to see this, to just get that one little peek through the door and just say, oh, this is some of the things that's possible, I think is really exciting. And so, I have to admit, there's a part of me that is genuinely I wish that you get the chip, and if you have a Herald, you can insert that chip into one of these computer panels in the Herald. The ones in the Herald obviously are similar, and you can go and then use that to remotely hack the satellites, and then people got to chase you away, and you got to fight to stay within a certain distance of the actual satellite to maintain the hack. There's many different variations that you can probably come up with in your head that would make that very interesting gameplay, but just to get the basics in there, I mean, because we've been waiting for so long, I'm just really happy about that. So I'm genuinely excited about this. This is something that I've been wanting to see in the game for so long, and the fact that we may be getting it in 3.6, and it may indeed work, and it may indeed be fun, that's cool. And obviously they're going to be looking for our feedback on this. Oh, I think you should change this. Oh, I think this would be really great if you went further with that. This is the time to kind of start brainstorming ideas once we get it in our hands and we get to play with it. Start saying, oh, have you considered this possibility? Have you considered that possibility? And certainly something I'll make videos about in the future. But yeah, I'm just excited to see it. I am very, very interested. If it ends up just being a single button that activates on all the satellites that just says hack, I'm going to be like, eh. But if there's a little bit of a mini game in there, if there's some higher level of interaction than just pushing a button and saying hack, I'm going to be very pleased. And I think that genuinely once that door gets open just a little crack, that's when we can really start to kind of comment and theory craft and, speculate about what could be possible with a system like this. So I'm very interested to see what CIG has got for us in terms of this hacking chip and what kind of functionalities we'll be able to pull off with it. I'm not expecting, a finished state system. I'm not expecting all the bells and whistles all at once. But I hope that, just being able to go in there and hack CrimeStat, if we can maybe hack other people's CrimeStat as well, obviously not towards a negative, because right now that would probably be a little too griefy. But I think that honestly, if we end up in a place where we can start selling hacks and there starts being a little bit of competition on the market, who's got the best chips, who's got the fastest hacks, that sort of thing, I think it could build to some very interesting gameplay indeed in the future. So I'm very excited to see what it's going to be like. Even if it is a really rough and barely functional Tier 0 implementation. Very excited to see what it's going to look like. Now, quantum, travel times, all this stuff. Now, I've seen some videos on YouTube, and some people have been talking about travel times in Star Citizen, and they use games like Elite Dangerous and EVE Online to draw their comparisons from. And I think that both these comparisons are disingenuous. I mean, with Elite Dangerous, you have a certain amount of interaction, a very high amount of interaction, in fact, with your travel through the universe. I mean, even when you're traveling around within a star system, you're interacting, you're managing your ship, you're maneuvering around within the star system, and managing your speed, making sure you don't overshoot, that sort of thing. I'm not a subject matter expert on Elite Dangerous. I don't pretend to be, but I've played it a little bit and I've enjoyed it for what it is. And you know what? They do have a very good system for traveling around in space, but Elite Dangerous is not Star Citizen. Now, when you're using the EVE Online comparison, I saw one video where someone was saying the travel time to cross X amount of light years or X amount of AUs in Elite Dangerous versus EVE Online. I think that even with the EVE Online comparison, it's a little bit disingenuous because realistically you're never really traveling around within a star system all that much in EVE Online. You're generally going from Jita to wherever, so you might be doing a number of jumps, and then once again you're interacting with your ship, unless you're just flipping on autopilot, you're traveling in secure space. You're like, oh, I'm gonna go get some groceries while I wait for my ship to make 50 jumps in secure space, So I don't really think that the EVE Online comparison really pans out, but there is one thing that both those games have that Star Citizen doesn't. And that is that you're actively interacting with your ship for the most part when you are doing this kind of travel. You're managing your ship. Whereas in Star Citizen, unless you get interdicted, you're saying, okay, I'm going from Crusader, now I'm going to ArcCorp, and now I sit in my chair for 15 minutes and watch the starfield go by. And I think that that's a bad implementation. And truthfully, I don't entirely blame CIG for this. I think that what they did is they introduced a fuel system, and they wanted to make sure that kind of communities would develop around worlds, and like over here we would have this gang, and over there would be that gang, and because it's so hard to get from one place to another, there isn't all that much interplay unless they really have a reason to go out there. I understand what they're trying to do, but I think that the implementation still is actually kind of bad, because you don't really interact with your ship while you're traveling. If it overheats, it overheats. If it runs out of fuel, it runs out of fuel. You have no control over that. And being someone who's kind of been on something of a long trip not too long ago, I kind of know what I'm talking about. Just quickly, before you see the pictures that are coming up, I just thought about this after the fact. I'm going to add this in real quick before I start my story. All these pictures were taken with a tablet inside my car while it was maybe about 2 degrees centigrade inside the car for the reasons I'm about to tell you. So before you comment on the quality of the pictures, it is what it is. Towards the end of January this year, I drove across Canada. And I'm leaving this picture up for just a second because, yes, you're seeing me drive. This is probably about 5:30 in the morning, leaving Sault Ste. Marie. And yes, I only have one headlight. This is one day into the trip, and already things are going wrong. What you may or may not know is this was during the so-called polar vortex, and it was probably about minus 36 to 40 degrees centigrade outside. And no, that's not wind chill. That's the actual temperature. So while the scenery was beautiful, if not frigid, I really had to kind of dig down deep because some things started going wrong with the car. I do not drive a car that is meant to be operated in these temperatures. It does not even have a block heater, and some of you may not even know what that is, and you're very lucky to live in a part of the world where that is true. But I found out as I traveled further and further north and then started traveling west that that was obviously going to be something that was going to haunt me for the beginning of this trip, because for about 2,000 kilometers, I was going to be traveling in the most bitter cold almost that I've ever experienced, and in a car that just was not meant for it. So I had to dig deep, and I had to kind of think of some creative solutions to solve certain problems as I was going along this trip. And one of them was the problem that, in many cars you may experience the problem of your car overheating. Whereas in this situation, it was completely the opposite. It was the car was too cold. Where my engine temperature gauge would normally read right down the middle during normal operation, it was reading almost at the bottom. And so I had to kind of cover up some vents. I had to kind of cut up some pieces of cardboard, get some pieces of tape, and try to cover up the car in such a way as to allow the engine compartment to build up enough heat to operate efficiently, and so I could turn the heaters on within the car. Because one thing you may not know is that if the engine is cold, generally the heater doesn't work either. So this was something that occupied me for a long, long time. And by the time that I finally got towards the Rocky Mountains, of course, the temperature problem had shifted away, and I could enjoy the drive for a little bit before things got a little bit more snowy and the roads got a little bit more treacherous through certain parts of the Rockies. But I was constantly interacting with the vehicle. I was constantly facing challenges and having to solve those problems. There was never a point where I was drowsy behind the wheel or bored, because there was always something new to kind of keep me busy. Now, I'm not opposed to long travel times in Star Citizen. Absolutely quite the opposite. In fact, even like looking at a game like World of Warcraft, a lot of people will point to certain things saying, this was something that eroded at the game, this was something that eroded at the game. One of my biggest complaints in the game was the portals, the instant portals put in cities. I don't think that they should have ever been there. I think that, truthfully, players should have to make the journey, but at the same time, the game should facilitate or create a universe where making that journey is entirely worthwhile. Now, certain ships in Star Citizen get a pass in this department, because ships like a Caterpillar, a Connie, even a Vanguard, and many of the larger ships, in fact most of them, if not all, you can get up out of the pilot seat. You can navigate around your ship, you can interact with different systems, you can eat a meal, you can take a shower, you can take a nap, you can take a crap, you can do whatever you want. You might get interdicted and wish you were in the pilot seat when it happens, but you can move around and you can do things. In a single seat fighter, that option just does not exist. So I think that instead of the system that we have now, there should be a system where, as a pilot, if you go in and you actively manage your quantum drive and you kind of manipulate either its fuel consumption or your rate of travel,
different things like that, you should be able to get the range that you want within reason out of that ship. You should be able to manipulate your quantum drive. Maybe slow it down. Just like a car. You drive your car too fast, you push it too hard, it can overheat. Or you can burn up too much fuel and make the journey much more expensive. Whereas if you lower the speed, then maybe it takes you longer, but you don't run the risk of overheating, and maybe you're much more fuel efficient. Something to that degree, something that allows the player to kind of get in there and mess around with the guts of their ship while their ship is operating, in effect kind of creating something of a mini game where you are really interacting with your ship and you're increasing immersion. And it's, I think that would be such a better solution than what we have now, which is just like, nope, you can only go this far and then you're just going to overheat, and that's just the way it is. I don't like that solution. I think that that's a lazy solution. And I think that a system that allows players to kind of define the range of their ship and the travel time of their ship, not simply by, it is this and nothing else, but define it by skill and experience, I think would be a far more immersive and superior system. Anyways, I'm about to lose my voice a little bit. I can already feel it cracking just a little. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this episode here. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.